In the 18th chapter of The Prince, Machiavelli sets out a small piece of arithmetic. Men are so simple, he writes, and so ready to obey the needs of the moment, that anyone who sets out to deceive will always find someone willing to be deceived. Read it quickly, and it sounds like contempt for human stupidity. Read it again, and it is not about the victim at all. It is a statement about supply and demand. The deceiver does not need genius. He only needs to arrive when somebody needs a particular thing to be true. Today, 4 stories in which somebody was comprehensively fooled, and in which, if you examine the documents afterwards, it is remarkably hard to find the lie. A message that was accurate. A charter that was believed for 700 years. A telegram that was shortened. And a dead man with a wallet full of receipts. Risto here, history buff, not historian. English isn't my first language, that's kind of the point. Learn a little, laugh a little, that's the deal. Human nature doesn't change, and neither does the plot. History rhymes and keeps the receipts. September 480 before the Common Era, the Persian fleet is anchored off Athens. The city has been evacuated and burned. What remains of Greek resistance is a few hundred ships crowded into the straits between the mainland and the island of Salamis. And the Greek commanders are arguing. The Peloponnesians want to withdraw south to the Isthmus of Corinth and defend the wall being built across it. Their homes are behind that wall. Their argument is not cowardice, it is geography. The Athenians have no homes left to defend and want to fight where they stand. The Spartan Eurybiades holds the command. The debate has been going on for days. Herodotus says that at one point a Corinthian tells Themistocles to sit down, since he is a man without a city. Themistocles, the Athenian, understands 2 things. The first is that in the open sea, the Persian fleet, which is larger and faster, will destroy them. In the narrows, numbers are worthless. Ships collide with their own side. The advantage reverses. The second is that he is losing the argument. By morning, the Peloponnesian ships will be gone. That night, he sends a servant across the water in a small boat. The man's name is Sichinus. He is a slave, and he is the tutor of Themistocles' children. Sichinus is taken to the Persian commanders and delivers a message. Themistocles, he says, is secretly well disposed towards the king. He wishes the king to know that the Greeks are terrified, that they are quarreling among themselves, and that they intend to slip away under cover of darkness. If the king blocks the exits, he can take them all at once, and the war ends tonight. Every word of this is true. The Greeks are quarreling. They are frightened. They are, in fact, about to leave. Themistocles has told the enemy nothing that his own intelligence officers would not have confirmed. Xerxes acts on it. He detaches squadrons to seal both ends of the strait. He orders the fleet to hold position through the night, oars manned, waiting for the breakout. By dawn, the Persian crews have been awake and at their stations for hours, and the Greeks cannot leave. The Peloponnesians, who wanted to withdraw, now have nowhere to withdraw to. The argument is over because Themistocles has closed the door from the outside. The battle begins in water too narrow for the Persian fleet to deploy. Ships foul one another. The rear ranks push forward into the wreckage of the front. Xerxes watches from a throne set on the slopes above the shore, with secretaries recording the names of officers who distinguish themselves. There is very little to record. The invasion never recovers. Xerxes goes home. Herodotus also says that after the battle, Themistocles sent the same servant back to Xerxes, this time to claim that he had held the Greeks back from pursuing him and destroying the bridges over the Hellespont. Not the truth. A favor offered to the man he had just trapped. About 10 years later, Athens ostracized Themistocles, and he ended his life as a provincial governor in the service of the Persian king. The credit he opened that night was collected.
The second story is a piece of paper. and it is the most successful piece of paper in European history. It is called the Donation of Constantine. It runs to a few thousand words of formal Latin, and it purports to be a decree issued by the Emperor Constantine in the 4th century. The document tells a story. Constantine has contracted leprosy. His physicians can do nothing. He is advised to bathe in the blood of infants and refuses. Then St. Peter and St. Paul appear to him in a dream and direct him to Sylvester, the Bishop of Rome, who baptizes him, and the leprosy falls away. In gratitude, the emperor makes a gift. He grants to Sylvester and his successors primacy over the great churches of Antioch, Alexandria, Constantinople, and Jerusalem. He grants them the imperial palace of the Lateran, the diadem, the purple cloak, the imperial insignia. He grants them the city of Rome, the provinces of Italy, and the western regions of the empire. And he announces that he is removing himself to Byzantium, since it is not right that an earthly emperor should hold power where the head of the Christian religion has been established. For 7 centuries, this document sits underneath the Western Church like a foundation stone. It is cited in papal correspondence. It is written into canon law. When popes and emperors quarrel over who outranks whom, and they quarrel for 400 years, this is the text that settles it. Dante knows it and blames it for corrupting the church. He does not doubt that it is real. In 1440, a Latin scholar named Lorenzo Valla writes a short treatise arguing that it is a forgery. He has no archive, he has no witnesses, he has no document from the 4th century contradicting it. What he has is the text itself and an extremely good ear. The Latin, he points out, is wrong. Not bad, wrong for its date. The document is written in a style centuries younger than the century it claims. It calls Roman officials satraps, a Persian word no 4th century Roman chancery would ever have used for its own administrators. It grants primacy to Constantinople as a patriarchal see, at a time when Constantinople had only recently been founded and was not yet a patriarchate. It refers to Judea, using an administrative term that had fallen out of use. It has Constantine describing his own baptism by a bishop who, according to every other source, was not the man who baptized him. Valla takes the document apart, word by word, the way you might date a building by the mortar. 2 details are worth adding. The first is that Valla was not a disinterested scholar. He was in the pay of the King of Naples, who was at that moment in an armed dispute with the Pope over territory. The treatise was useful to his employer. The second is that a few years later, Valla moved to Rome and took a position as a secretary in the papal curia, where he remained until his death. The treatise itself was not printed until 1517. It was published by a German knight, and it reached Martin Luther, who read it and wrote to a friend that he was so shaken he could scarcely believe the Pope had not known. The third story removes a handful of words from a telegram. In July 1870, France and Prussia are quarrelling over a Hohenzollern prince's candidacy for the vacant Spanish throne. The candidacy has already been withdrawn. The crisis technically is over, but Paris wants more. The French ambassador, Benedetti, is instructed to obtain from the Prussian king a formal undertaking that the candidacy will never be renewed. The Prussian king Wilhelm is taking the waters at the spa town of Bad Ems. Benedetti approaches him on the promenade. Wilhelm declines to give the guarantee, courteously, and later sends word through an aide that he has nothing further to add. Nobody raises their voice. It is a summer morning at a spa. An account of the exchange is telegraphed to Berlin. Bismarck receives it over dinner. He has spent months preparing for the possibility of war with France. He does not add a word to the telegram. He shortens it. He removes the courtesies. He removes the explanations. He removes the aid, the second message, the diplomatic softening. What is left is a bare sequence. The French ambassador made a demand, and the king declined to see him again. He releases this version to the press. In Paris, the shortened text reads as a public humiliation of a French ambassador. In Germany, it reads as a French ultimatum contemptuously rejected. Both countries erupt. Within days, crowds in both capitals are demanding war. France declares it on the 19th of July. 6 weeks later, the French army is encircled at Sedan, and Napoleon III is a prisoner. In January, in the Hall of Mirrors at Versailles, Wilhelm is proclaimed German Emperor. Bismarck later described the evening in his memoirs and told the story of how his two generals had lost their appetites reading the original and got them back reading his version. It is a good story. It is also the account of a man writing his own legend 20 years afterwards, and you may want to hold it loosely. The editing, though, is not in doubt. You can put the two texts side by side. Nothing has been invented, something has been removed, and a continent has moved. The last story begins in a London mortuary in the winter of 1943, with a decision about a body. The Allies are about to invade Sicily. Everyone can see it. Churchill remarks that anybody but a fool would know it is Sicily. The problem is not concealing the target. The problem is persuading the Germans that the obvious answer is wrong. Two officers in a basement in the Admiralty propose a solution. They will let the Germans capture the plans. They obtain the body of a man who has died in London, a homeless Welshman with no close family who ingested rat poison. They give him a rank, a regiment, a name. Major William Martin, Royal Marines. And then they do the part that matters. They fill his pockets. There is a letter from his father, disapproving of the engagement. There are two letters from a fiancée called Pam, one of them written on the back of a hotel bill. There is a photograph of her in a swimsuit. In reality, a clerk who worked in the same building. There is a receipt for an engagement ring, and the price is high enough to be a small crisis. There is a stern letter from his bank about an overdraft. There are ticket stubs from a London theatre, dated to establish that he was alive and in England 4 days before. There is also a briefcase, chained to his belt, containing a private letter between two senior generals, which mentions, in passing and without emphasis, that the coming operation will be against Greece and Sardinia, and that a deception operation is being run to make the Germans think it is Sicily. A submarine releases the body off the Spanish coast. A fisherman finds it. Spanish authorities pass photographs of the documents to German intelligence. The documents reach Berlin, are assessed as genuine, and go to Hitler. Divisions are moved to Greece and Sardinia. Minefields are laid. When the Allies land in Sicily in July, the response is slower than it should have been. Not one document in that briefcase was true, but the overdraft was true. The ring was expensive, The father was disappointed. The theatre tickets were real tickets. The forgers understood something about how belief works. Nobody checks the important document. They check the small ones around it. And if those hold, the important one is carried through on their shoulders. That mechanism has not aged. It is the reason the convincing fraud arrives with a reference number, a date, a plausible amount, and a name you half recognize. And never with an outright impossible claim. The lie is always the one thing in the message that nobody thinks to verify, because everything surrounding it verifies.
Four Deceptions, 25 Centuries. A slave rowing a true report across the water to an enemy who acted on it exactly as he was meant to. A charter that reordered Europe for 700 years, undone by a man who noticed the wrong vocabulary. A telegram that lost a handful of words on its way to the printers. A dead man with a fiancée who never existed, and an overdraft that did. Machiavelli's arithmetic holds in all four. Xerxes needed the Greeks to be fleeing. The medieval papacy needed Constantine to have signed something. France and Prussia, in the summer of 1870, both needed to have been insulted. Berlin, in 1943, needed the obvious answer to be a trap. The deceiver supplied it. In two cases, he barely had to lie at all. In another, he simply removed words. And in the last, he hid one enormous lie inside dozens of tiny truths. That is the part worth keeping. A forgery can be exposed. A lie can be contradicted. But a carefully chosen truth has no weak point to attack, and it does most of its work inside the listener's mind. If you enjoyed this episode of Risto's History Rhymes, please consider subscribing wherever you listen and sharing the episode with someone who might enjoy it. Until next time.